David Messinger had survived 17 different ways humans could die in space, only to discover that accounting was immortal across all known galaxies. He stared at the holographic spreadsheet floating before him, watching alien tax codes scroll past in 17 different languages, and wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. The recruitment poster for the Galactic Foreign Legion had promised adventure, purpose, a fresh start among the stars. What it hadn't mentioned was that someone still needed to reconcile the fuel expenditures for Battalion 7. "This is insane," David muttered, rubbing his eyes. The office aboard the GFL carrier Righteous Dawn looked exactly like his cubicle back on Earth, right down to the uncomfortable chair and flickering overhead lights. He'd fled a dead-end accounting job at Henderson and Associates, only to end up doing the exact same thing 40,000 light-years from home. His terminal chirped. Another message from Commander Ortiz requesting the quarterly ammunition audit. David deleted it and pulled up the GFL job board instead. The positions scrolled past: logistics coordinator, supply chain analyst, dietary planning specialist. Every single one made him want to throw himself out an airlock. Then he saw it, buried 3 pages deep. Combat crew positions available, Fighter Wing Alpha. David clicked before his common sense could stop him. The requirements appeared: combat experience, weapons proficiency, aerospace training, physical conditioning scores above 90%. He possessed exactly none of these qualifications. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. The door to his cubicle hissed open. Tikor, a Vaxillian accountant whose scales changed color with his mood, leaned in. Currently, they were stress purple. "Messinger, did you file the waste reclamation reports?" "Not yet. They were due yesterday." Tikor's scales shifted to irritation orange. "Why do humans always procrastinate?" David minimized the fighter wing application. "Why do Vaxillians always care about deadlines?" "Because regulations matter." Tikor's tail twitched. "Some of us take our duties seriously." After Tikor left, David stared at the application form. His cursor blinked in the combat experience field. He thought about spending another decade reconciling ammunition counts and calculating fuel margins. Then he began typing. 3 weeks of intense combat operations in the frontier wars. Expert marksman. Advanced flight training. Physical conditioning. Exceptional. Every word was a complete fabrication. David hit submit before he could reconsider. The rejection would arrive tomorrow. He'd go back to his spreadsheets, count down the years until retirement, and wonder what might have been. At least he tried. The acceptance letter arrived 6 hours later. David read it 3 times, certain there'd been a mistake. Report to Fighter Wing Alpha, Hangar Bay 7, 0600 hours tomorrow. Bring personal effects. Housing reassignment approved. "Oh no," David whispered. "Oh no, no, no." He pulled up the fighter wing service record. 53 confirmed kills, decorated for valor during the crystalline incursion. Currently deployed aboard Righteous Dawn for deep space interdiction operations. Their casualty rate was 12% annually. David had never even driven a motorcycle. His terminal chirped again. Commander Ortiz, demanding the fuel audit. David logged off, walked to his quarters, and spent the night wondering if accounting might not have been so bad after all. Hangar Bay 7 smelled like hydraulic fluid and ozone. David arrived carrying a duffel bag containing everything he owned, which wasn't much. 3 crew members stood beside a sleek fighter craft, its hull covered in scorch marks and hastily patched armor. "You Messinger," the speaker was human, built like a freight container with arms. His flight suit identified him as Crew Chief Rodriguez. "That's me." Rodriguez looked him up and down with visible skepticism. "You're the combat veteran. 17 missions," David lied, his voice cracking slightly. "Mostly classified." "Right." Rodriguez jerked his thumb toward the fighter. "This is the spiteful bastard, crew of 4. Pilot, co-pilot, weapons officer, engineer. You're replacing Daniels in the engineer slot. He took a plasma burn during the last sortie, decided desk duty looked pretty good." A Krellian female emerged from beneath the fighter, wiping lubricant from her forearms. Her name Patch Red Vrix. "New engineer. Does he know port from starboard?" "Says he's qualified," Rodriguez replied, his tone suggesting doubt. The pilot descended from the cockpit, removing her helmet. She was human, dark-skinned, with close-cropped hair and eyes that had seen too much. Her name was Harper. "Can you run pre-flight diagnostics?" Harper asked. David had no idea what that meant. "Absolutely." "Good. Mission briefing in 20 minutes. Pirate activity in the outer sectors. Should be routine." She paused, studying him. "You look nervous." "Just eager," David said, his palms sweating. "Sure." Harper didn't sound convinced. "Try not to get us killed." The briefing room contained 12 fighter crews representing 6 different species. David sat in the back, trying to look competent while a holographic display showed their target zone. "Intelligence reports a pirate flotilla operating near the trade routes," the briefing officer explained. She was Taurelian, her crystalline structure refracting the room's light into rainbow patterns. 4 corvettes, maybe 8 fighters. Standard hit-and-run tactics. Fighter Wing Alpha will sweep the sector and engage. David's stomach clenched. Real combat, with actual weapons, against people trying to kill them. "Questions?" the briefing officer asked. Someone raised a hand. "Rules of engagement. Weapons free on confirmed hostiles. Try not to hit the cargo freighters." She smiled, her crystalline teeth glinting. "Command gets cranky about collateral damage." The crews filed out. David followed Harper and Rodriguez to the hangar, his legs feeling distant and strange. "First combat jump?" Vrix asked, her antennae twitching with amusement. "No," David lied. "Just been a while." "Relax. Pirates are usually terrible shots." This did not comfort him. The cockpit of the spiteful bastard was cramped, filled with displays and switches David couldn't identify. He strapped into the engineer's station, staring at the control panel like it might speak to him. Harper's voice came through the comm system. "Engineer, confirm reactor status." David looked at the incomprehensible display of numbers and indicators. One of them was green. "Reactor looks good. Specific readings, Messinger. Very good," David tried. "Optimal, even." There was a long pause. "Rodriguez, can you see his panel from there?" "Yeah," the crew chief replied. "Everything's nominal." "Barely. Wonderful." Harper sounded deeply unconvinced. "Everyone hold on." The fighter catapulted from the hangar, and David's stomach attempted to exit through his spine. G-forces crushed him into his seat as Spiteful Bastard accelerated, joining 11 other fighters in formation around Righteous Dawn. "Wing Alpha, this is command. You are cleared for hyperspace transition. Good hunting." The stars stretched, twisted, and then they were somewhere else entirely. A debris field floated in the distance, backlit by an orange dwarf star. Scanner contacts appeared on David's display. "Multiple contacts," Rodriguez called out. "Confirming hostile signatures. 4 corvettes, 9 fighters. They've seen us." The enemy fighters broke formation, accelerating toward them. Harper threw Spiteful Bastard into a violent roll, and David's breakfast threatened rebellion. "Weapons hot," Harper announced. "Messinger, I need power to forward guns." David stared at his panel. There were approximately 900 switches. "Which one?" "The power distribution controls. Route reactor output to weapons systems." David hit a switch. The cabin lights died. "Not that one," Rodriguez shouted. "Sorry." David hit another switch. Something began beeping urgently. "That's life support," Vrix said, her tone remarkably calm for someone suffocating. "Try the one with the lightning bolt symbol." David found it, stabbed the control. The beeping stopped and the lights returned. A different display showed power flowing to the gun systems. "Finally," Harper muttered, lining up a shot on an approaching pirate fighter. The Spiteful Bastard shuddered as its cannons fired, tracers lancing through space. The enemy fighter disintegrated in a brief flash. "Good kill," Rodriguez confirmed. "2 more incoming, high angle." The next 15 minutes were the most terrifying of David's life. Harper threw the fighter through maneuvers that should have been impossible, dodging plasma bolts and returning fire, while David frantically tried to keep the systems operational. Every time Harper called for something, David hit switches until he found the right one, working purely by trial and error. "Damage to port stabilizer," Vrix reported, her 4 arms flying across her controls. "Compensating. Can you patch it?" Harper asked, her hands never stopping their dance across the flight controls. "Give me 30 seconds." They didn't have 30 seconds. A pirate corvette loomed ahead, its gun batteries tracking toward them. Harper dove beneath its firing arc, so close David could see the hull plates, then pulled up hard and fired everything. The corvette's shields flared, absorbed the hits, and returned fire. Spiteful bastard bucked violently as plasma bolts slammed into its armor. Shield generators are overloading, David reported, watching yet another display turn angry red. I think, yes, definitely overloading. Can you compensate? Harper's voice remained steady despite the violence surrounding them. David examined the controls, saw a dial labeled Shield Distribution, and turned it hard to the left. The overload warning vanished, replaced by new warnings he chose to ignore. Did that work? He asked. Still alive, Rodriguez answered. So yes. Three more fighters from Wing Alpha converged on the corvette, their combined firepower overwhelming its defenses. It broke apart in silence, the explosion eerily beautiful against the star field. Wing Alpha, this is command. Enemy forces are breaking off. Pursue and eliminate remaining hostiles. The fighter wing chased the fleeing pirates through the debris field. Harper caught one trying to hide behind a derelict freighter, dispatching it with a short burst. The remaining enemies scattered, jumping away to hyperspace before they could be caught. Wing Alpha returned to the barn, mission successful. Harper let out a long breath. Everyone intact? Mostly, Vrix replied. Messinger, you did adequate work for someone who clearly has no idea what he's doing. I have no idea what you mean, David said weakly. You routed shield power to the coffee maker, Rodriguez said. I watched you do it. Did it work? The shields held, so I guess so. Still doesn't explain how you passed the certification exams. David decided this was an excellent time to remain quiet. The post-mission debriefing should have been routine. The crews filed into the ready room, exhausted but satisfied. 2 pirates' corvettes destroyed, 4 fighters eliminated, no friendly casualties. Command would be pleased. Then Commander Ortiz walked in. David's blood turned cold. His former supervisor looked exactly as David remembered, perpetually irritated, clutching a datapad, scanning the room with accounting precision. His eyes locked onto David immediately. Crew Chief Rodriguez, Ortiz said, his voice clipped. Might I have a word with your new engineer? Harper frowned. Is there a problem, Commander? That depends. Messinger, could you step outside? David stood, his legs feeling like water. He followed Ortiz into the corridor, certain his brief career as a fighter crew member was about to end spectacularly. Ortiz rounded on him. What exactly do you think you're doing? Flying combat missions. You're an accountant, a mediocre one, but still. You have 0 combat training, 0 engineering experience, and 0 business being on a fighter crew. Ortiz consulted his datapad. According to your application, you have extensive combat experience. Would you care to explain how you acquired this experience while reconciling fuel expenditures for Battalion 7? David considered lying, then decided the truth might be novel. I made it all up, every word. I was desperate. Clearly, Ortiz pinched the bridge of his nose. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? Falsifying military records is a court-martial offense. Are you going to report me? Ortiz was quiet for a long moment. I should. The regulations are quite clear. But Wing Commander Trellis just submitted a commendation for your crew's performance today. Apparently, you kept the systems running despite having no formal training. He called it instinctive. Ortiz's expression suggested he found this deeply suspicious. So now I'm in an awkward position. Court-martial a decorated crew member or admit I let an accountant slip through to combat duty. David waited. I'm going to make you a deal, Ortiz finally said. You stay with Fighter Wing Alpha. You actually learn how to do your job properly. And in exchange, I'll transfer T-Core to your old position and never speak of this again. Really? Really? Because watching you try to escape, that cubicle was the most pathetic thing I've seen in 15 years of service. And because we're actually short on combat engineers. Most people are smart enough to avoid getting shot at. Ortiz leaned closer. But if you get yourself killed because you don't know what you're doing, I'm putting it in your permanent record. Thank you, Commander. Don't thank me. Just don't die. Ortiz turned to leave, then paused. And Messinger, the fuel audit for Battalion 7 is still due. I'm sending you the files. 2 months later, David sat in the Spiteful Bastards engineer station, running through pre-flight diagnostics with actual competence. He'd spent every spare moment studying the fighter systems, learning from Vrix, and attending engineering classes during off-duty hours. He still wasn't great, but he was no longer actively dangerous. All systems green, David reported as Harper fired up the engines. Look at you, being useful, Rodriguez said, genuine approval in his voice. I have no idea what any of you are talking about, Vrix added. Messinger has always been an excellent engineer. Harper laughed, guiding the fighter toward the launch bay. Command just assigned us to patrol duty. Boring sector, no activity expected. Should be a nice, easy run. You just jinxed us, Rodriguez groaned. Superstition is unbecoming of a professional soldier, Harper replied, but she didn't sound convinced. David checked his controls one more time, making sure he actually understood what each one did. Through the cockpit window, he could see the other fighters forming up around them, ready to launch into whatever the galaxy threw at them next. It wasn't what he'd imagined when he fled Earth. The work was harder, the hours longer, and people regularly tried to kill him. But when Harper called for more power to the shields, David knew exactly which switch to hit. When Vrix needed help routing auxiliary systems during combat, he could actually assist her. When Rodriguez needed someone to blame for minor malfunctions, David could defend himself with technical specifications. He belonged here, not because he'd lied his way in, but because he'd decided to stay and earn it. Wing Alpha, you are cleared for launch. Smooth flying out there. Copy that, Control, Harper responded, and the spiteful bastard shot into space once more. David smiled, checked his board one final time, and settled in for patrol. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and somewhere out there, adventure waited. But first, they had a sector to secure, and if David was being honest with himself, he still owed Commander Ortiz that fuel audit. Some things, really, were universal. 9 months into his accidental military career, David Messinger discovered that being good at your job created entirely new problems. He floated in zero gravity beneath the spiteful bastard, rewiring a damaged power, coupling with the kind of efficiency that would have made his former accounting supervisor weep. The repair that should have taken 3 hours was done in 40 minutes, and the system was running better than factory specifications. Power flow looks perfect, Vrix called down from the access hatch above. You have become annoyingly competent, Messinger. Thanks, I think. David sealed the panel and pushed himself back toward the main hull. That should hold for another 5,000 flight hours, minimum. Rodriguez appeared from the cockpit, magnetic boots clanking against the deck. Wing Commander wants to see all of us in the briefing room. Harper was already waiting when they arrived, her expression unreadable. Wing Commander Trellis stood beside a holographic display, his Voranthy features arranged in what David had learned to recognize as serious concern. The commander's chitinous plates shifted colors as they entered. Crew of the spiteful bastard, Trellis began without preamble. You've been selected for a classified operation. High risk, high value. Details are restricted until security clearance verification is complete. We already have security clearance, Harper pointed out. This requires something different. Intelligence section wants deep background checks on everyone involved. They're being thorough. Trellis's plates shifted to apologetic blue. Apparently, someone in the command chain has questions about your crew's composition. David's stomach dropped approximately 6 inches. What kind of questions? Rodriguez asked. The kind where they want to interview everyone individually, cross-reference service records, and verify combat experience claims. Trellis looked directly at David, especially for anyone who came through non-traditional recruitment channels. Harper crossed her arms. Our crew's performance speaks for itself. We've completed 8 high-priority missions without failure. I agree completely. However, intelligence section answers to different masters. Trellis pulled up a document on the holographic display. Messinger, your service jacket shows extensive combat experience prior to joining the GFL. 3 separate campaigns, advanced training certifications, commendations for valor. Impressive record. David's mouth went dry. Thank you, sir. Intelligence wants to verify everything. They'll be conducting interviews starting tomorrow. Be prepared to discuss your pre-GFL service in detail. Trellis deactivated the display. That's all, you're dismissed. The crew filed out. David lagged behind, his mind racing through possibilities. He could confess now, take the court-martial, and save everyone the embarrassment. He could run, steal a shuttle, and disappear into the outer sectors. He could. Messinger. Harper grabbed his arm, steering him into an empty maintenance bay. Rodriguez and Vrix followed, sealing the door behind them. "We need to talk," Harper said. David swallowed hard. "About what?" "About how you're the worst liar I've ever seen, and your face just now screamed guilty conscience." Harper leaned against a tool locker. "Rodriguez, what do you think?" "I think our engineer has been faking something since day one," Rodriguez replied calmly. "The question is what?" Vrix's antennae twitched with amusement. "I determined this within the first mission. Messinger had no idea how to operate basic systems. He was simply very good at pretending and learning quickly." David looked between them. "You all knew." "Of course we knew," Harper said. "But you kept us alive while learning on the job, which is more than some trained engineers manage. So we didn't ask questions." "The problem," Rodriguez added, "is that intelligence section will ask questions. Lots of them. And they have resources we don't." David slumped against the bulkhead. "My entire service record is fiction. I was an accountant before joining the GFL. I lied on the application because I was desperate to escape spreadsheets. Commander Ortiz knows, but he agreed to keep quiet if I actually learned the job." "An accountant," Vrix sounded delighted. "That explains your suspicious competence with system diagnostics. You approach problems like mathematical equations." Harper rubbed her temples. "Okay, this is manageable. We just need to prepare you for the interview." "How do you prepare someone to lie to intelligence section?" David asked. "By making sure you're not lying." Harper pulled up a data pad. "You've completed 8 combat missions with us. That's real experience. You've repaired systems under fire, managed damage control during 3 separate boarding attempts, and kept this fighter operational through conditions that would have grounded most crews. That's real skill. But my pre-GFL record doesn't matter," Rodriguez interrupted. "What matters is what you've done since you got here. We'll coach you through the interview, focus on actual accomplishments, and if they push on the old stuff, you redirect to your current performance." "Fake it till you make it," Vrix offered helpfully. "Isn't that the human expression?" "That's been my entire career so far," David muttered. "And it's worked beautifully," Harper said. "Listen, every single person in the GFL is running from something. Bad relationships, failed careers, criminal records, species who wanted them dead. Nobody cares where you came from. They care whether you can do the job." David wanted to believe her. What if intelligence section cares? "Then we make them not care," Rodriguez said firmly. "You're our engineer. We've flown 9 months together, survived situations that killed better trained crews, and we're not losing you because some desk officer wants to check boxes." Harper straightened, her command voice returning. "Here's what happens. Tomorrow, you go into that interview confident. You answer questions about your current service honestly. If they ask about before, you give vague answers and redirect. You're a combat veteran now, Messinger. That part isn't fake anymore." The intelligence section interview room was deliberately intimidating. Bare walls, harsh lighting, a single table with 2 chairs. David sat across from Captain Williams, a human intelligence officer with the kind of face that suggested he'd heard every lie ever invented. "Specialist Messinger," Williams began, consulting his tablet. "Thank you for coming." "Not like I had a choice, sir," Williams smiled slightly. "True, let's start simple. How many combat missions have you flown?" 8 with Fighter Wing Alpha, all successful. And before joining the GFL, David had rehearsed this moment a dozen times. "Several engagements. Different circumstances. Can you be more specific?" "Some of those operations remain classified, sir. Different chain of command, different security protocols." David kept his voice steady. "I can discuss my work with Wing Alpha in detail, if that helps." Williams made a note. "Your service jacket mentions advanced engineering training. Where did you receive this training?" "Various facilities. I've always been good with systems." understanding how components interact. The GFL provided additional certifications once I joined. Your jacket also mentions combat experience in 3 separate campaigns. Can you name them? David's heart hammered. Sir, with respect, my current performance should speak for itself. I've kept the spiteful bastard operational through 8 high-risk missions. My crew trusts me with their lives. Isn't that what matters for this assignment? Williams studied him for a long moment. You're deflecting. I'm focusing on relevant experience, sir. Why did you join the GFL specialist? This, at least, was easy to answer honestly. I wanted something different. My previous life wasn't working. The GFL offered a chance to start over, prove myself in ways that mattered. Running from something, towards something, David corrected. There's a difference. Williams made another note, then pulled up a holographic display. David's service record appeared, highlighting the pre-GFL sections. These entries are remarkably vague. Dates don't quite line up with known operations. References are minimal. It reads like someone who understands military documentation well enough to fake it. David's throat tightened. Sir, I'm not finished. Williams expanded the display, showing David's performance reviews from the past 9 months. However, your current record is exemplary. Crew Chief Rodriguez submitted 3 separate commendations. Pilot Harper rates you as the best engineer she's worked with. Even Wing Commander Trellis, who is notoriously stingy with praise, called your work exceptional. I try, sir. More than try, apparently. Williams deactivated the display. Here's my assessment, specialist. Your pre-GFL record is suspicious, possibly fabricated. Under normal circumstances, I'd recommend additional investigation and potential disciplinary action. David's hands clenched beneath the table. However, Williams continued, we're not in normal circumstances. The mission we're planning requires a crew with proven combat effectiveness and absolute trust in each other. Your crew meets those requirements. More importantly, they vouched for you. All 3 of them independently stated they wouldn't accept the mission without you. They did. Harper was particularly emphatic. Said something about how credentials don't matter in combat, only whether you can keep the ship together when everything's exploding around you. Williams leaned back. So here's my recommendation. I'm approving your clearance for this mission. What happened before you joined the GFL stays buried. But if you screw this up, if your mysterious past causes problems, I will personally ensure your next assignment involves counting inventory in a warehouse somewhere unpleasant. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Thank your crew. William stood. Briefing is tomorrow at 0800. Don't be late. David found Harper, Rodriguez, and Vrix waiting in the hangar bay, pretending to perform maintenance on the spiteful bastard. They looked up as he approached. Well, Harper asked, I'm cleared. David sat heavily on a tool crate. Williams knows something's wrong with my record, but he's letting it go because you 3 vouched for me. Obviously, Vrix said, her tone suggesting this was the only reasonable outcome. You are our engineer. Rodriguez tossed him a rag. Stop looking emotional and help me clean these coolant lines. We've got a mission briefing tomorrow. What did you tell Williams? David asked Harper. The truth. That you're the best engineer I've worked with, that you've saved our lives multiple times, and that I trust you completely. Harper's expression softened slightly. Also that if intelligence section had a problem with you, they could find themselves another crew. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did. Harper gestured at the fighter. We're a crew, Messinger. That means something. Your fake background, my questionable decisions during the crystalline incursion, Rodriguez's sealed disciplinary record, Vrix's reasons for leaving her homeworld. None of that matters. What matters is whether we can rely on each other when things go wrong. Thanks again. You guys are the best. But on a serious note, does anyone know what this mission is about? David asked. We're about to find out, Rodriguez said. Because whatever this mission is, intelligence section doesn't hand out classified assignments for easy jobs. Vrix's antennae drooped slightly, her species equivalent of a concerned frown. I have reviewed historical data. Top secret missions have a survival rate of approximately 60%. So we'll be in the 60%, Harper said firmly. We've beaten worse odds. David picked up the rag and started cleaning coolant lines, his hands steady despite the lingering adrenaline. Almost a year ago, he'd been drowning in spreadsheets, desperate for any escape. Now he was cleared for a top-secret mission with people who trusted him enough to risk their careers defending him. He still didn't know what he was doing half the time. The engineering manuals made more sense than they used to, but combat situations still required significant improvisation. Every mission brought new challenges he'd never trained for, systems he'd never studied, problems with no textbook solutions. But that was fine. He'd spent 9 months faking it till he made it, and somehow, without quite noticing when it happened, the faking had become real. He was a combat engineer now, for better or worse. The credentials might be fiction, but the skills were genuine. "Hey, Messinger," Harper called from the cockpit. "After we finish prep, want to grab dinner? Might be our last quiet meal for a while." "Sure," David replied, examining a coolant line for damage. "Just let me finish this section. These connectors look worn." "See," Rodriguez said to Harper. "Told you he'd become insufferable about maintenance standards." "I blame you for teaching him," Harper replied. Vrix laughed, the sound like wind chimes. "I blame the GFL for accepting his fraudulent application." "Best mistake they ever made," David muttered, and was surprised to realize he meant it. Whatever the mission brought, whatever dangers waited in the classified briefing documents, he'd face them with people who knew exactly who he was and chose to fly with him anyway. That was worth more than any credentials, real or fabricated. The coolant line was definitely worn. David made a note to replace it before they launched. Details mattered in combat, and keeping his crew alive had become the only job description he cared about, even if he'd lied his way into it. The mission briefing revealed why intelligence section had been so particular about crew selection. David sat beside his crewmates in a sealed conference room 3 decks below the main hangar, watching as Captain Williams activated a holographic display showing a heavily fortified space station orbiting a barren moon. "This is listening post Gamma 9, Williams began, his voice flat and professional. "Officially, it's an abandoned survey station. Unofficially, it's a front for the Crevathi Syndicate's intelligence operations. They've been intercepting GFL communications for the past 8 months, compromising at least 15 missions and causing 32 casualties." Harper leaned forward. "What's the objective?" "Infiltration and data extraction. We need their decryption keys, communication logs, and network architecture. Everything they know, we need to know." Williams pulled up tactical schematics. "The station has minimal defensive weapons but significant sensor coverage. A direct assault would give them time to wipe their systems. You'll need to approach stealthily, board the station, and extract the data before they realize what's happening." Rodriguez frowned. "Why send a fighter crew? This sounds like work for special operations." "Because fighters are expected in this sector. A special operations ship would trigger alerts, but a damaged fighter limping in for emergency repairs." Williams smiled coldly. "They'll believe that." "You want us to fake battle damage," Harper said. "We'll provide real battle damage. Light plasma scoring, some disabled systems, enough to look authentic. You request emergency docking clearance, gain access, then move to the computer core while they're assessing your ship." Williams highlighted several corridors on the schematic. "Specialist Messinger, this is where you become critical. We need someone who can interface with their systems, bypass security, and extract data quickly. Your engineering background makes you uniquely qualified." David felt 3 pairs of eyes turn toward him. "My engineering background. Your personnel file mentions computer systems expertise along with mechanical engineering. Quite versatile." Williams's expression suggested he knew exactly what kind of expertise David actually possessed. "Think you can handle it?" David studied the schematics, his accountant brain automatically analyzing the layout. Data systems, security protocols, network architecture. This wasn't engineering work at all. This was exactly his old job, just with more explosions. "I can handle it," David said, meaning it completely. The spiteful bastard approached listening post-Gamma 9, trailing genuine plasma leakage and flickering power readings. Williams's people had done excellent work making the damage look authentic without actually crippling the ship. Harper's voice came over the comm channel, pitched perfectly between professional and desperate. Gamma 9, this is GFL Fighter 592. We've sustained critical damage and require emergency docking. Request immediate clearance. There was a pause, then a Crevathi voice responded. 592, transmit your authorization codes. Rodriguez fed them fabricated credentials that intelligence section had prepared. Another pause, longer this time. David watched his scanners, seeing the station's sensors sweeping over them repeatedly. 592, you're cleared for docking bay 3. Maintain current approach vector. Any deviation will result in defensive action. Understood. Gamma 9, maintaining vector. The fighter slid into the docking bay, settling onto the deck with a hiss of landing struts. Through the canopy, David could see Crevathi technicians approaching with diagnostic equipment, their scaled features arranged in what might have been curiosity or suspicion. Remember the plan, Harper said quietly. We're exhausted, stressed, grateful for their help. Vrix and I handle the technicians. Rodriguez provides security. Messinger, you find their computer core and work your magic. They emerged from the fighter, David carrying a toolkit that concealed several data extraction devices intelligence section had provided. A Crevathi supervisor approached, her crest raised in what David had learned meant attention. You sustained significant damage, the supervisor observed. What happened? Harper rubbed her face tiredly. Pirate ambush near the outer markers. We barely made it out. Is there somewhere we can rest while you assess the repairs? Crew quarters are down that corridor. Repairs will take several hours minimum. The supervisor gestured to her technicians. We'll need to access your systems to run diagnostics. Whatever you need, Harper said. Just get us flight ready again. The crew moved toward the quarters, but David paused at the docking bay entrance. I should stay with the ship. Make sure the diagnostic interfaces are properly connected. Our systems are pretty fried, and I don't want any crossed signals making things worse. The supervisor's crest rippled with approval. Responsible. I appreciate that. My lead technician is Vren. Coordinate with him. David nodded and turned back toward the spiteful bastard, making a show of examining the damage while the Crevathi technicians began their assessment. He helped them connect diagnostic cables, answered technical questions about the ship systems, and gradually established himself as a cooperative and helpful presence. After 30 minutes of visible cooperation, David wiped his hands on a rag. I need to grab some specialized tools from storage. Our main power coupling uses non-standard connections. Vren barely looked up from his diagnostic panel. Go ahead, we'll be here for hours. David walked casually out of the docking bay, following the route he'd memorized from the schematics. The computer core was exactly where intelligence section had indicated, protected by a simple keypad lock that yielded to the bypass tool they'd provided. David entered, closing the door behind him, and approached the main terminal. The interface was different from GFL systems, but followed logical patterns. Data architecture, security layers, access protocols. David's fingers moved across the controls with the muscle memory of 17 years reconciling accounts and navigating corporate networks. He bypassed the first security layer in 3 minutes. The second took 5. The third required creative thinking, but David had spent years finding creative solutions to impossible spreadsheets. Same principle, different application. Come on, David muttered, watching progress bars crawl across the screen. Just a few more seconds. The door hissed open behind him. David spun to find a Crevathi security officer standing in the doorway, weapon drawn and crest fully extended in alarm. Step away from the terminal, the officer ordered. David's mind raced. The data extraction was 70% complete. He needed maybe 2 more minutes. His hand drifted toward the concealed weapon intelligence section had provided. Then inspiration struck. Thank goodness you're here, David said, injecting panic into his voice. Your system is compromised. I was running diagnostics on our fighter's computer and detected an intrusion attempt. When I traced it back, it led here. The security officer's crest lowered slightly. Compromised? Look. David pointed at the screen, where his extraction program was disguised to look like security monitoring. Someone's been siphoning data for weeks. See these access logs? Those timestamps don't match any authorized personnel. The officer moved closer, studying the display. David held his breath. "This is impossible," the officer said. "Our security is impenetrable. That's what everyone thinks until they get hacked." David pulled up another screen, showing what looked like intrusion alerts, but was actually covering the final stages of data extraction. "I can help you trace the source, but we need to work quickly before whoever's doing this realizes we've noticed." The officer holstered his weapon, leaning over David's shoulder to examine the data. "Where is the intrusion originating?" "Still analyzing." David's peripheral vision caught the extraction completion notification. 100%. "Wait, I've got something. External connection from somewhere in the outer sectors. They've been using a relay to hide their location." "Can you block them?" "Better than that. I can lock down your entire network to prevent future intrusions." David initiated a system isolation protocol that would actually prevent the Crevathi from detecting what he'd done for the next several hours. "There, you're secure now. I'd recommend a full security audit once we leave." The security officer's crest rippled with what might have been gratitude. "You have our thanks. This could have been catastrophic." "Just doing my duty," David said, carefully palming the data chip containing everything he'd extracted. "I should get back to my crew and the repairs. They'll wonder where I went." He returned to the docking bay to find Vren still deep in diagnostics on the spiteful bastard. David picked up his toolkit and resumed helping with the repairs, working alongside the Crevathi technicians for the next 3 hours while the data chip burned like a hot coal in his pocket. Harper emerged from the crew quarters periodically to check on progress, her eyes asking silent questions that David answered with subtle nods. Rodriguez maintained a visible presence near the docking bay entrance, playing the role of watchful security. Vrick spent her time ostentatiously napping in the quarters, the picture of an exhausted crew member. Finally, Vren stepped back from the fighter. "Repairs are complete. Your primary systems are restored, though I'd recommend a full overhaul once you reach a proper facility." "We really appreciate this," Harper said, her relief sounding genuine. "You probably saved our lives." The supervisor approached, her crest neutral. "Your engineer discovered a security breach in our network. We're conducting a full investigation." Harper's expression showed only mild curiosity. "That's concerning. I hope it wasn't serious." "It could have been catastrophic if not detected." The supervisor looked at David. "Your diligence is commendable." "Just lucky I noticed," David replied modestly. 10 minutes later, the spiteful bastard cleared the station's docking bay and accelerated away. Nobody spoke until they jumped to hyperspace and were safely distant. "What happened in there?" Harper finally asked. David pulled out the data chip. "I got everything intelligence section wanted. Also convinced their security that I was helping them stop a hacking attempt." Rodriguez started laughing. "You're telling me you talked your way out of getting caught by pretending to help them?" "It seemed like a good idea at the time." "It was brilliant," Vrick said, her antennae twitching with amusement. "Very human approach to problem solving." Harper shook her head, grinning. "Mission successful. Let's get this data back to command and see if Williams is satisfied." Captain Williams was more than satisfied. He was practically gleeful, which was disturbing to witness. "This is incredible," Williams said, reviewing the extracted data in his office. "Communication protocols, agent networks, operational plans for the next 6 months. You didn't just get what we asked for, Messinger. You got everything." "I'm thorough," David replied. "Clearly." Williams looked up from his terminal. "There's something else. The system logs show you had a run-in with their security. Care to explain how you talked your way out of that?" David recounted the encounter. Williams's grin widened with each sentence. "Outstanding. Not only did you extract the intelligence, you convinced them their security breach was coming from somewhere else. They'll waste months investigating phantom hackers while we exploit their entire network." Williams stood, extending his hand. "Well done, specialist. All of you. This operation will save lives." The formal commendation ceremony happened 3 days later. Wing Commander Trellis presented each crew member with the GFL Distinguished Service Medal while half the carrier's personnel watched. David stood at attention, feeling absurdly proud of a medal earned through skills he'd lied about having. Afterward, Trellis pulled the crew aside. "There's one more thing. Command wants to upgrade the spiteful bastard with enhanced systems for future operations. New weapons, improved sensors, upgraded computers. You'll be down for 2 weeks while engineering works their magic. What kind of missions are we talking about? Harper asked. The kind that require advanced weapons and tactics training. Trellis's plates shifted to anticipatory orange. You've been selected to attend the GFL Advanced Combat School. 12 weeks of intensive training in deep strike operations, intelligence gathering, and specialized tactics. It's demanding, but your performance has earned you the opportunity. Rodriguez whistled. Advanced Combat School, that's elite territory. You're an elite crew, Trellis said simply. Your orders will come through in 2 weeks once the upgrades are complete. In the meantime, take some leave. Rest. You've earned it. The crew gathered in the observation deck that evening, watching stars slip past in hyperspace while sharing drinks and comfortable silence. David held a glass of something Vrix had recommended that tasted vaguely like antifreeze, but was apparently a delicacy on her homeworld. Advanced Combat School, Rodriguez mused. Never thought I'd see the inside of that place. Me neither, Harper admitted. They usually only take veteran crews with years of experience. We have 9 months, David pointed out. We have 9 months of doing the impossible, Vrix corrected. There is a difference. David studied his reflection in the observation window. 9 months ago, he'd been a desperate accountant fleeing spreadsheets and monotony. Now he was a decorated combat engineer with a top-secret mission success under his belt, headed for elite training that would prepare him for operations even more dangerous than what they'd already survived. His service record was still mostly fiction. His credentials were fabricated. His background was a carefully maintained lie that only a handful of people knew about. But the medals were real. The skills were real. The trust his crew had in him was real. What are you thinking? Harper asked. My past life, David said. My old job before the GFL. Remember, I was an accountant. I organized corporate accounts, financial systems, data management. That's why I could break into the Cravathi computer systems so easily. It was basically what I did for 17 years, just with higher stakes. Rodriguez laughed. That's right, an accountant. We've got an elite combat crew led by a pilot with questionable decision-making skills, a crew chief with a sealed disciplinary record, a weapons officer from a species nobody trusts, and an accountant pretending to be an engineer. We're a disaster waiting to happen, Vrix agreed cheerfully. We're the best disaster in the fleet, Harper countered, raising her glass. To 9 months of not dying. To advanced combat school not killing us, Rodriguez added. To fake credentials and real competence, Vrix said. To getting away from spreadsheets, David finished. They drank, and for a moment everything was perfect. The spiteful bastard would get its upgrades. They'd master advanced tactics. They'd fly more missions, face more dangers, and probably survive things they had no business surviving. David had lied his way into this life, but he'd earned his place in it. The universe was vast and dangerous, and filled with opportunities for people desperate enough to seize them. He grabbed his chance with both hands and held on through sheer stubbornness and luck. You know what the best part is, Harper said, breaking the comfortable silence. We get to do this all over again at Advanced Combat School. New challenges, new missions, new chances to prove we're better than we have any right to be. I can't wait, David said, and was surprised to realize he meant it. The stars streamed past, endless and inviting, and somewhere ahead of them waited elite training designed to push the best crews to their limits. They'd face it together, this improbable group of misfits who'd somehow become one of the most effective teams in the GFL. David finished his drink, set the glass aside, and allowed himself a satisfied smile. His dead-end accounting job felt like someone else's life now, a distant memory of spreadsheets and fluorescent lights and quiet desperation. He'd wanted something different. He'd found it 40,000 light-years from Earth, flying through danger with people who trusted him despite knowing exactly who he really was. The mission was complete. The upgrades were coming. Advanced Combat School waited ahead. And for once in his life, David Messinger was exactly where he belonged.